We'll get rid of anyone who can't do their job properly, the boss said sternly. I felt ashamed because I couldn't finish my work on time. I get it. I'll quit, I said sadly. I was exhausted and couldn't keep up anymore, so I chose to leave the company. Are you really giving up? It won't be easy for someone your age to find another job. The boss teased me. The day after I left my job, I got a call from a former colleague on my phone. Hey, it's bad. Can you come back, Mr. Watson? They begged. It seems like ever since I left, our contract companies have been calling nonstop. My ex-colleague explained. Firing him was a mistake, a client said, making the section chief apologize deeply to me. My name's Benjamin Watson. I lost my dad when I was little. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely, I told my mom. It's all right, dear, she said. With no family close by, my mom raised me alone. Seeing her work so hard inspired me to help. Mom, I'll work as soon as I finish school. I'm sorry for making things tough, I said. Don't worry, I'll handle it, she reassured me. Getting a job right after high school wasn't easy. I applied to many places but couldn't even get an interview for most. I was without a job for about a month. Then finally, one company gave me a chance. It was a sales job at an insurance company. I was nervous because I'd heard that working in insurance sales was tough, with strict targets to meet. But I really wanted to help my mom and have a job. So I went to the interview determined to do my best. Luckily, they hired me right away, maybe because they saw how keen I was or maybe they needed someone urgently. Now, after 35 years, I'm still working in sales, dealing with big clients. My sales just about meet the targets each month and I haven't moved up in the company. But I think my hard-working nature still shines through. My clients trust me because I treat them well. A client wants to ask about insurance. Is that all right? One person asked. Can I come by this afternoon? Another person wanted to know. Of course, I'd be glad to help, I answered. Even on my days off, if someone needed me, I'd go to them. I just wanted to make sure they felt better about things. Mr. Watson, do you take enough time off? A colleague asked me. Yeah, I do, I said, but maybe I didn't really. You say you do, but I bet you're not really taking enough time off, right? It's not fair that clients get days off, but it feels like salespeople don't, she pointed out. Yeah, but it's important to make sure people feel okay, even if it means working on days off, I tried to explain. The workload kept getting bigger, but I kept going because I wanted to help others. And even though it was tough, hearing clients say thank you made it all worth it. It's so helpful that you come whenever I need you. Thank you, a client said. No problem, feel free to call me anytime, I replied. One of my bosses didn't like the way I worked. You must feel pretty good about yourself, selling such low-cost insurance. Section Chief Howard said, not impressed. I'm not trying to show off, but every insurance policy matters when you think about what the client needs. I replied, sure of myself. Section Chief Howard was recently transferred from headquarters to our sales department. Unlike me, who only graduated from high school, he's an elite with a degree from a top university. It seems like the head office has high hopes for him, given that he's become a section chief almost 20 years younger than me. Do you think you're better just because you've been here for over 30 years and still haven't moved up? He fired back. From Section Chief Howard's perspective, it probably seemed like I wasn't up to the task. And honestly, looking at my sales numbers, I couldn't really argue. Since you're part of my team, I need good results from you. My own success depends on it, Section Chief Howard emphasized. It looked like Section Chief Howard was really aiming for a higher position, and he was pushing hard for it. While that ambition isn't a bad thing, I couldn't agree with his approach. Listen, everyone, selling low-cost stuff to small businesses won't make us much money. Aim for the big clients and sell them our top products. Section Chief Howard motivated the young sales team and sent them out. Section Chief Howard's strategy was to sell top-tier insurance to big clients, meaning policies with the highest premiums. I wasn't a fan of this approach. The insurance he promoted covered a wide range of scenarios and was designed to prepare for any situation. But the more comprehensive the coverage, the higher the cost, which I felt wasn't fair. Insurance shouldn't be a daily burden, covering things the client might not even need, I argued. But Section Chief Howard's response was all about creating anxiety in clients and convincing them they needed extensive coverage. He called it a sales skill. But to me, that didn't make sense. I believe in providing insurance tailored to each company's needs, no matter their size, by listening to them carefully. Sure, it takes time, and I end up working late every day, but it's important to make sure they understand what they're getting. Section Chief Howard didn't pay attention to my concerns. Your method is too slow. Sell faster and make more money. Sorry, he said. Despite his apology, I kept doing things my way, even though it meant going against my boss. But I couldn't say for sure that my way was the best. Are you even listening to me? My wife asked one evening. Huh, what did you say? I had been neglecting my family time. Working late every night, I hardly had any time with them. Exhausted from work, I wasn't fully present when I was home. I just wish we could have more time together. I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted from work. I apologized. You really need to rest on your days off. I'm worried about you, my wife said, expressing her concern for my well-being. My wife wasn't happy about how little time we had as a family. Despite working for them, they were feeling neglected. Was this really all right? I kept asking myself that question, and then my way of doing things seemed to reach a dead end. I'm really sorry, I couldn't meet the quota. I apologized to Section Chief Howard as he scolded me. I couldn't meet this month's target, I admitted, feeling desperate. Mr. Watson, do you think you can make up for it next month? Section Chief Howard asked. Well, that depends. The shortfall from this month would just get added to next month's target, and since I'm barely meeting the current quota, the chances of catching up seem very slim, I explained. If you can't, maybe you should think about going part-time, Section Chief Howard suggested. Part-time? Can salesmen even work part-time? I was confused. As I hesitated, Section Chief Howard smirked. If you don't like that idea, then you're fired. I was fired. Fired. Surprisingly, saying it out loud didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. I can't say I'm not a bit sad about losing my job, but haven't I been working hard, sacrificing time with my family? I pondered. Maybe it's a chance to appreciate the time with my loved ones that I've been missing out on. I thought of my wife's face, understanding, and decided to resign. Oh, are you really quitting? It's going to be tough for someone like you to lose their job. Section Chief Howard continued to talk, but I just bowed my head and returned to my seat, reflecting on my time here since high school. I think I'll need to start handing over my responsibilities. I began the process of resigning that day. Unusually, I made it home on time. When I opened the front door, my wife looked surprised to see me. At first, she seemed puzzled, but then she smiled. You're home early today. Dinner isn't ready yet. Can you wait a bit? Oh, thank you, she said. It might have been the first time I really watched my wife cook since we got married. I realized how much time I had been spending at work. Well, I've made up my mind to quit my job, I announced. I understand, my wife responded without asking for details. The next day, I handed in my resignation to Section Chief Howard. He had a big smile on his face, seeming quite pleased. Make sure to finish the handover quickly, he'd instructed. I will, I replied. I tidied up my desk and explained my duties to the person taking over. Until my last day, I accompanied my replacement on client visits. What? You're leaving, Mr. Watson? A client exclaimed. Yeah, well, many clients tried to convince me to stay, but I politely bid them farewell. And then, a month later, I left the company. Leaving the company where I had spent so much time was bittersweet, but I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Surprisingly, my wife seemed happy despite my unemployment. Aren't you worried now that I'm not working? I asked. Not at all. I was more worried about you overworking yourself and getting sick, my wife replied. She had always been concerned about my well-being. I had been so focused on work that I made her worry. Why worry? You've worked hard all this time. It's okay to take a break now, she reassured me. Thanks for always looking out for me. How about we go on a trip? We have plenty of time now, I suggested. That sounds wonderful. Let's go to a hot spring and relax after all those years of hard work, my wife agreed. My wife was thrilled when I suggested a trip, so the next day we quickly set off on a hot spring getaway. However, while we were relaxing together, I received a call from a former colleague on my smartphone. What's wrong? It's really bad, Mr. Watson. Please come back, the voice pleaded urgently. I was taken aback by my ex-team member's distress. I asked him to explain what was going on. He told me that ever since I left, the company had been bombarded with calls from our contract partners. They were all threatening to cancel their contracts now that I was gone. The sheer volume of calls was disrupting their normal operations. It's not just the calls. If all these contracts get canceled at once, it will be a huge problem for the company. Can't you please reconsider and come back? He begged desperately. I'm sorry, but I won't be returning, I replied firmly. What? He exclaimed in disbelief. Handle each company with care and sincerity. That's all, I said before ending the call and turning off my smartphone. My wife, who had been observing, looked puzzled. What was that about? My ex-team member asked me to return, realizing how valuable you were after I left, I guess, I explained. My wife smiled at the story. Even though I missed my job, I knew that if I went back, I wouldn't see her smile like this. I made the decision not to return to work, for the sake of my wife and the happiness I saw in her expression when I wasn't working. From then on, I ignored calls from my ex-team member and enjoyed our trip. While out for a walk, my wife suggested we visit an old-style cafe. This place looks charming, doesn't it? I've been wanting to check it out. You have a good eye for cafes, I commented. My wife's expression turned slightly melancholy at my words, and I wondered if I had said something odd. You see, visiting cafes is one of my hobbies, she confessed. Oh, I didn't realize. Cafes are popular and have such charming food, so it makes sense that many women enjoy them. I responded. I'm actually a certified barista, did you know? She revealed. That's incredible, I exclaimed. I've mentioned before that visiting cafes is my hobby and about my certification. My wife continued, her tone growing a bit subdued. I hung my head in realization. I must have missed that when I was working. I'm sorry for not paying attention before. That sounds great. When we get home, I'd love to try your special coffee, I replied. True to her word, when we returned from our trip, my wife brewed me some coffee. It was completely different from the instant coffee I usually drink. This is delicious. I can't believe I can have this at home. I'll make it for you anytime, she promised. From then on, my morning started with the coffee my wife made for me. Spending more time with my family, I realized there were so many things I didn't know. While regretting that I had neglected my family until now, I decided to cherish every moment with my wife. A few days later, I got a call from Chief Howard. I hesitated whether to pick up, but given the recent situation with my ex-team member, I decided to answer. Mr. Watson, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can you please come back? Chief Howard apologized and asked me to return to the company. It turned out Chief Howard had been dealing with a flood of calls from our contract partners. He had personally visited them and apologized. Mr. Watson was always kind and considerate, even when everyone else was pushing insurance aggressively. That's rare these days, Chief Howard explained. It wasn't just one or two companies, it was the same story everywhere he went. Firing him was a mistake, Chief Howard admitted, realizing that his sales approach was wrong. Listening to Chief Howard relay the words of the customers warmed my heart. I was mistaken. What the customers truly value is thoughtful service, he admitted. You have a keen eye for understanding customers. I want to start from scratch and learn from you, Chief Howard confessed, his tone devoid of the condescension from before. I appreciate your offer, but I won't be returning, I declined. I understand. Well, if you realize your mistake and change your ways to treat your customers better, then that's what matters. I've already found a new job, I explained. My words seemed to catch Chief Howard off guard, even over the phone. After a moment of silence, he responded, I see. There's nothing more we can do then. Chief Howard sounded disappointed as he apologized to me and ended the call. While I do worry about the company I used to work for, I'm also excited about starting something new. No matter how old you get, starting afresh is nerve-wracking, but as long as I'm with my wife, I know I'll be okay. Together with my wife, we opened a small cafe. When I lost my job, my wife shared a little dream with me. I want to run a cafe I love and enjoy a relaxed life in our old age. So we saw my resignation as an opportunity to chase my wife's dream together. At first, most of our customers were her friends, but soon word spread and our business started to thrive. With my background in sales, I was good at serving customers, while my wife enjoyed chatting with her friends while working, always seeming happy. One day, as I greeted a customer as usual, to my surprise, it was Chief Howard. His eyes widened when he saw me. I couldn't help but give a wry smile and led him to an open seat. Is this your new job? He asked. Yes, my wife and I started it together, I confirmed. It seemed Chief Howard was taking a break from work and decided to stop by the cafe. He wasn't one to visit places often before, but it seemed he was back in the field since that incident. "You look really happy now, Mr. Watson. Are you?" he observed. Thinking back, I always seemed tired when I was at the company. He might be onto something. I used to feel guilty about not spending enough time with my wife. Now I'm enjoying my work while being with her. "You seem to be enjoying yourself too. You look more energetic than before," I noticed. "I'm training to be like you, Mr. Watson. You're my role model," Chief Howard said before checking his watch and getting up. "I'll bring everyone from work next time." "Thank you for the meal," he said before leaving the cafe, seeming upbeat. "It looks like Chief Howard is on a path to further growth from here." "Honey, I made coffee," my wife called out. "Great, thank you," I replied. After closing the cafe, we sat together at the counter, enjoying the coffee my wife brewed. Today had been busy, but it felt nice to sit here with her. We talked about the day's work. It was a calm and special moment, and it was all thanks to my wife. "Thank you for everything," I said to her. "Why so serious all of a sudden?" she asked. "I've decided to treasure these moments of happiness with you from now on," I explained.